Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to 52 Weeks of Leadership, presented by UB Center for Leadership and Organizational Effectiveness. My name is Molly Anderson. I'll serve as our host today. We're really excited about today's program and want to thank Geico Buffalo for being our sponsor. We have the pleasure of introducing for the very first time Dr. Danielle Tessing, originally a Buffalo native who recently joined the UB School of Management as Assistant Professor of Organization and Human Resources. Her topic today is Family Matters, leading employees to optimize work and family dynamics. She has earned her PhD in organization behavior from Wharton School of Business, and her research is around motivation, leadership, and social factors. As always with our series, if you have any questions, please add them to the chat and we'll get to them at the end. Without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Danielle Tessing.
Thank you so much, Molly, for that introduction, and welcome to everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for attending today's session, where I'll be talking about the work-family interface. My hope is that today's talk will not only help you for your own personal well-being and development and thriving, but also to help you as leaders to better navigate the unique work-family challenges that your employees may face and really facilitate work-family enrichment and thriving. Feel free throughout the talk to enter any questions or comments you have into the chat, as we'll have a little time at the end, and I would love to hear from you. So thanks again for attending, and let's dive in. I'd like to start with two commonly held assumptions about work and family. The first is that work and family are opposing forces. One is in conflict with the other. And indeed, if you start to Google work-family, conflict is what auto fills in. We typically see that if you're doing well in one domain, it's going to hurt the other. A related assumption that people hold is about this ideal worker. There's the sense that the best type of employee is one with nothing going on outside of work. This type of individual is assumed to be more productive and committed. We think someone needs to be readily available around the clock for the organization. And indeed, work-family dynamics are tricky. There's ample evidence and research on work-family conflict. We know that family structure can create work-family conflict, especially if you have young children or you're taking care of aging parents. We also know that certain job factors contribute to work-family conflict, like working really long hours or having an unsupportive boss. And individual differences also contribute to work-family conflict, like trying to be a perfectionist in both domains. But my hope is throughout the talk that we can really start to challenge the assumptions I just mentioned and think of work and family not as two opposing forces on a scale, such that when one gets better, the other gets worse, but instead think about work-family enrichment, work-family harmony, such that one domain can actually benefit the other. And again, I hope the talk is for your own personal thriving, to challenge these underlying assumptions you may hold and better facilitate work-life harmony for your own self, but also to help you as a leader really enhance the work-family enrichment of your employees. I'd like to share a study with you that I conducted actually in a coupon processing plant in Mexico. And we surveyed the employees and asked them about how inherently interesting they found their job. This refers to intrinsic motivation, asking people if they find their work satisfying and enjoyable. We then asked them questions about how much their family motivated them while on the job. So we asked them to rate their level of agreement with statements like, I care about benefiting my family through my work. I want to do well by my family through working. And just a quick note on that is we define family very loosely, recognizing that there are many different family structures. Family means different things to different people. And we also found a range in how much people feel this family motivation, the sense that when they're working, they're doing good by their family, regardless of their family structure. So there are some people who are married with children that cognitively really see this strong link between work and family. But there are people who are married with children that don't report as high levels of this family motivation. So what did we find in our study? We found that among employees with enjoyable jobs, with high levels of intrinsic motivation, that family motivation didn't really have an influence on their job performance. These employees performed really well, regardless of their family motivation. And this goes in line with decades of research on motivation, indicating that intrinsic motivation, inherently enjoying your job, is really the holy grail of job performance. When employees like what they do, they're naturally drawn to their work, they're naturally absorbed in it, and you don't have to work as hard as a leader to incentivize them to do their tasks. But what did we find for the employees with unenjoyable jobs who had low levels of intrinsic motivation? We found that people who were motivated through their family at work had the same level of job performance as the intrinsically motivated employees. And as you can see, those employees with unenjoyable jobs who had low levels of family motivation had low job performance. So we know that people differ in how inherently enjoyable they find their work, and some tasks are just more fun than others. And it can be challenging as a leader to try to motivate people when they have to do tasks that just aren't inherently interesting, but still need to get done. And our research shows that if you can help employees link their families and how they benefit through their work, this can help foster high levels of job performance. And we see these effects above and beyond family financial need. So family motivation isn't just about trying to bring home a paycheck for your family. It's a bit broader than that, seeing that as a worker, you're benefiting your family, you're setting a good role model for your children, and so on. Another related study looked at work absorption. So this is the extent to which people are really focused on the task at hand when they're at work. Think back to what I mentioned before about the ideal worker. We typically think the best worker is going to have no commitments outside of work, and it's easy to assume that if someone has a lot of family obligations, they're going to be distracted while they're working and not really absorbed in their job. So this research team asked employees across a variety of jobs and industries to report on their work absorption with questions like rating the extent to which you agree with, nothing can distract me while I am working, or when I'm at work, I'm totally absorbed with the task at hand. And then they analyzed differences in work absorption between people who were single and without children versus employees with other family structures. And they actually found higher levels of work absorption among people who were married and or had children. Essentially for these employees, they knew that after work, they were going to have a whole host of domestic activities to deal with. Things like cooking dinner, grocery shopping, laundry, helping kids with homework. So when they were at work, they really knew to hone in on their job and focus and get their work done. And as the researchers stated, anticipating domestic responsibilities after work reinforces rather than distracts from the work mindset, thus keeping employees more immersed psychologically in their work. Another fascinating study that really focuses on leadership looked at employees, again, across a variety of jobs and industries. But all the participants in this study were leaders, people with direct reports. And the research team asked the supervisor of each leader in this study to rate that individual on what's called transformational leadership behaviors. So this is the extent to which a leader challenges themselves and others, sets a positive example for others, recognizes and rewards the individual contributions of their direct reports, empowers others, and so on. And what this research team found was actually higher levels of these transformational leadership skills among employees who were married with children. If you think about this, if you have a very busy home life, you have to get really good at managing your time, navigating a lot of different roles and responsibilities, switching between tasks frequently, having to deal with unique situations, and even engaging in a lot of negotiation, which I know really well from my little toddler right now. And the researchers found that these skills you develop from home life positively transfer into the leadership domain to help you be a better leader. Now, there was one other study that revealed a potential dark side to this family motivation, again, supplementing some of the prior work on work-family conflict. This particular study, again, found that family motivation was actually positively associated with job effort and productivity. Again, going against that assumption about the ideal worker being more productive if they don't have any external commitments. So again, that family life harnessed higher levels of productivity. But this research team also asked about how creative employees are based on their family motivation. And in this study, they found that family motivation led to lower levels of employee creativity. If you think about it, when people have high levels of family motivation, they really care about doing a good job at work, but it can be kind of stressful to think about taking risks, anything that might put their job in jeopardy. And creativity inherently involves taking risks, coming up with novel ideas, maybe even spending time on something when you don't know what the outcome will be. And family motivation can make people a bit risk averse because they really don't want to lose their jobs because they see it so connected to their family that they care about, and it can make people less creative. So you've probably been thinking in the back of your mind, there are some complexities here. There's some additional nuance, especially in light of the pandemic. And we'll get to that in a moment. Another complexity in this whole domain of work and family are that people differ in their preferences for segmentation versus integration. So people just differ in the extent to which they set up these mental boundaries between work and family and work and life more generally. Some people are called segmenters. They really like to keep work and family separate, both in terms of time and space. So a segmenter typically likes to go into the office, focus on their job, get it done, leave at a designated time, and then come home and not think about work. Similarly, they also don't really want their family life to interfere with their time at work. I was really surprised to learn that segmenters respond negatively to on-site childcare options. They'd actually rather bring their children to a childcare center that's not inside the building where they work because they want that clean break between work and family. I had a colleague who was a segmenter, and after she would drive home from work, she would pull into her garage, turn off the car, shut the garage door, and then do a 2-minute mindfulness meditation to really clear her mind of work so that when she stepped in the door, she was fully in home mode. On the opposite end of the spectrum are integrators. They're more comfortable with this blurring between work and family. So integrators don't mind maybe needing to take a phone call in the evening or answer some emails. They typically prefer flex time more so than segmenters. So what's interesting about integrating versus segmenting is that one is not better than the other. However, it's hard to know what people's preferences are unless you talk to them. And it's easy to assume that what works for you and how you like to draw boundaries between work and family is the same way that your employees might like to do this. Another complexity and challenge with integration versus segmentation has really come to life with the pandemic. So the pandemic has certainly forced many people into integrating on a whole nother level. I do want to recognize that there's still been a lot of people who have remained working in person throughout the pandemic, essential workers. But for many people, they have started working from home and in a way, living at work. And it's not just the same working from home challenges that we saw pre-pandemic, but they're unique because you might be working from home and so is your spouse, and you only have one space for a home office, or kids are going through Zoom school while you're trying to work. So this is a whole new arena we are in. And so I just want to recognize that as I'm talking about this research and how work and family can really work together and enrich one another, we're also in a really hard time to make this happen. We also see that employees have been working increased hours when working from home, and the employment rate among women has gone down drastically. I was really surprised to see the numbers haven't been this low since 1988. But as with any challenge, it also presents opportunities for self-reflection, for us to think about what really matters, and opportunities for growth. So what are some concrete things you can do to facilitate work-family enrichment among your employees? One thing is simply to ask your employees about their preferences for integration versus segmentation. And when possible, to incorporate their needs and preferences with back to office transitions that are happening right now in some places, to really understand what is helping people manage all these different aspects of their life at the same time and get them in harmony with one another. Another thing to keep in mind is, regardless of whether you are a segmenter or an integrator, we all need to segment in some ways so that we can be in the present. So it can be helpful to create off hours where people are not expected to be working, not even dealing with emails, so that they can focus on their non-work lives. And in parallel, it's also beneficial to create times for people to just focus on their work. Again, I know this is hard if you have children at home and can't necessarily prevent someone from barging in your office door. But when possible, to give employees a chance to just focus on their tasks at hand and not need to be switching what they're doing so often. So a good thing here is to have hours or even days where meetings are not permitted, so people can get engaged in that deep work. You also want to keep in mind that productivity is not the same as how many hours someone is working. There's a lot of interesting monitoring that's going on now with technology. People might be aware that if they get up from their workstation to unload the dishwasher, their status might go to inactive in the chat. And if the company's okay with it, you want people to feel comfortable taking these little breaks to better facilitate work-family dynamics and not feel like stepping away for a couple minutes, they're going to be penalized. Really thinking about what is the importance of face time, both in the office and virtually. And of course, as a leader, you want to lead by example and set clear boundaries for yourself so that your employees feel empowered to do the same. A few other thoughts are, when possible, to create opportunities to make family life salient while people are working. Because recall that family motivation is in part a mindset. So when the situation permits, something like Bring Your Child to Work Day can really help remind employees of how they're setting an example for their children. Family picnics also present a unique opportunity. And I would recommend not just, keeping everyone outside to have a nice meal together, but also allowing employees to bring their children and their family members to their physical workspace where they can say, this is where I sit and do my job. Here's my pictures of all of you that I look at throughout the day. It gives me a boost of energy, again, to really help employees make that link between family and work. Two things to be mindful of are you want to be careful about policies that are just focused on work-family dynamics and not work-life dynamics more broadly. There is some research suggesting that single employees without children sometimes feel like they don't benefit from work-family policies. They feel less justified in being able to leave the office at 5 p.m. and they want to feel like their lives outside of work are just as important and respected as people with traditional families. Last thing here is if you're providing resources to employees from a work-family or work-life perspective, to really make sure those resources are meaningful and not just a Band-Aid for some underlying problem. So I've seen a number of companies offering access to mindfulness meditation resources, and I think this is fantastic. But if you give people free access to an app, but they're still expected to work crazy long hours around the clock, access to an app is not really going to make much of a change in terms of their work-family thriving. So at the start of the talk, I mentioned how work and family are traditionally viewed as opposing forces. And I hope you've come to see that there's ample evidence to suggest that work and family can actually enhance one another. There's a positive spillover from one domain into the next. If you're interested in learning more, here's a few books I recommend. One is Leading the Life You Want by Stu Friedman. And this book really talks about finding harmony among all aspects of your life. So work, home, but also the community and kind of your inner being, the essence of who you are. And this book contains some practical steps and activities you can use to try to enhance your harmony in all elements of your life. Stu also has a podcast called Work and Life to elaborate on a lot of these topics. Another book I recommend is Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg. It focuses on the unique challenges that women often experience in their careers, particularly as they aspire to ascend into leadership. And then the last book is Couples That Work by Jennifer Petriglieri. This book recognizes that when you fall in love, it changes your life and even your careers at times. And so this book focuses on how to thrive in your relationship as a couple and also how to manage your careers. The last thing I'll mention is that I love working with organizations. And if you're interested in learning more about the unique work-family dynamics among employees at your specific company, I'd love to talk with you. I know that leaders and employees are busier than ever. So if you've never done research with an academic before, often this can entail people taking a few brief online surveys, and then I analyze the data rigorously and come back to your organization with insights about what we see from the evidence, the data, and also some practical steps about how you can further improve work-family dynamics among employees at your organization. And all of this is free of charge, of course. So if you'd like to learn more, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And I just want to thank you all again so much for attending today's talk. And I'll open it up to any questions in these last few minutes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tussing. This is such great and timely information for so many of us who are going to once again adjust our work and home lives as we return to offices this fall. So good information. We have a few questions in the chat. One is from Rick, who said, would those at the highest levels of organizations, for example, executives, tend to be concentrated in one or the other integrated versus segmenter category, and why or why not?
That's a great question. We typically see that the preferences for work-life segmentation versus integration, they vary across job, occupation, gender, even age. I do think there is sometimes the need to integrate more or in different ways as you ascend the organizational ranks and have to deal more with emergency situations in the organization. And sometimes that can take the form of more integrating for top level executives in terms of time, but not necessarily space, because that piece you can control a little bit more, again, pre-COVID especially, being able to segment the physical space where you work and live. Great question.
And really building on that question is another, do we have a situation where it is sometimes, is that being an integrator and sometimes that being a segmenter?
Absolutely. I think this is a great question, and something I'd love to see even more research on is how our preferences for integration versus segmentation kind of change and evolve over time. I think the pandemic has kind of pushed so many of us into integrating more and helped delineate when and where and why segmentation is important. Again, as I mentioned, I think we're learning that segmentation in some form is really helpful, but I think a lot of people who are segmenters have also learned from the pandemic that there's things about integrating that they like. They like being home so that they could help get their child off the school bus, even if that means they're going to have to work after dinner tonight. Whereas before the pandemic, they may have been really against that sort of idea.
Thank you. We have a question from Michael, and he is asking if your research covers those of us that wish to continue working past the normal retirement date. If so, do you have any suggestions for combating ageism in the workplace?
Oh, this is such a great question. Ageism is unfortunately a real force in the workplace. It's definitely out there. And I would say that unfortunately, as with so many biases and discrimination, it's something that people experience. And I would just encourage you to keep pursuing what you're passionate about and really let your passion come through for your job and career when you have the opportunities to speak about it. For example, in an interview, because I think a lot of ageism in particular is driven by people's assumptions that as we age, we're going to be less engaged and energized in the workplace, even though there isn't research to support this at all. And we see higher levels of commitment and helping behaviors in a lot of cases among older employees.
Well, thank you again, Dr. Tussing. We're so glad to have you here at the University of Buffalo. And if anyone would like to reach her, they may reach out to Chloe or to her directly. We'd be happy to help facilitate any other questions or comments you might have. Also want to let everyone know that next week, our 52 Weeks of Leadership will take place on a Tuesday due to the holiday. July 6th will be Callan Norris, who is a PhD candidate. His topic is diversity and inclusion, why knowing the difference improves leadership. So we hope you all join us next week. Thanks again, Dr. Tussing, and everyone have a great week.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.